Welcome to Harmonium LA, the podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Heedy Gandolfi, emotional wellness expert, founder of Harmonium LA, and published author. The world needs healing now more than ever. My goal is to bring you inspiring conversations, tips, and techniques that will help you build a sustainable healing toolkit. The Harmonium LA podcast is the only resource you will need to slow down, stop searching, and start healing. Welcome back to another episode of Stop Searching and Start Healing. So my guest today has an incredible story of how he moved from addiction, heavily being addicted to gambling and drugs, ending up in a lawsuit with his business, and now moving forward, having healed himself, moving forward on his own healing journey, and is now helping others through giving back, through entrepreneurship, through helping them build their businesses and moving forward with their own lives, allowing them to step into their own power, allowing them to step into the person that they need to be. He has an incredible story. I cannot wait for him to share this with us, because I know that especially over the last 12 months, a lot of us have found ourselves emotionally, financially stressed, anxious, and challenged. And this story today is just going to bring hope and inspiration, and hopefully a few tips and pointers that might help if you are feeling stuck at any of those areas of your life. So let me give you a bit of a background about him. And then, as usual, we will bring him in and let him do the talking. Michael G. Dash is an entrepreneur, best-selling author of Chasing the High, business coach, recovering addict, speaker, and philanthropist. He founded the Fate series from Addict to Entrepreneur, published on Thrive Global and Medium, and MD Coaching and Mentoring, where he works with entrepreneurs, helping them streamline their businesses while increasing profits and helping them find clarity, consistency, and connection, allowing them to step into the true leader they were meant to be. He is the co-founder of The Activated Life, a social movement focused on inspiring a culture of positivity, authenticity, passion, empathy, and resilience while giving back to others. Michael is an avid volunteer, fundraiser, and mentor, and is dedicated to bringing positive change to leaders of all kind. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Michael to today's show. Michael, welcome so much to the show today. Thank you so much for joining me all the way from Tulum. How are you doing?
I am amazing. Thank you for having me. Excited to be on.
Yeah, really, really thrilled. So I was just saying in the intro, what an amazing, inspiring journey you have had yourself. We met a couple of years ago almost now at a mastermind that we're both part of. And I remember sitting there on the first day and being really nervous and really unsure. And we wanted to go around and introduce ourselves. And I remember hearing you stood up, you did your little speech and stuff. And I was so inspired. I felt really connected to you, just listening to your story, what you had been through, what you'd have achieved. And then I think you were talking about the book. I have the book here, which is just amazing. And I just felt really connected to you, and we did connect over those couple of days while we were there, and we've managed to stay connected ever since. And I just absolutely have loved seeing your journey, watching where you've been, what you've been through, and what you're now doing in the world, and how you're giving back and how you're inspiring and healing so many people on the next level, that I just thought it would be amazing for you to be a guest on the show, which of course is all about healing, and just talk to people about your journey, how you overcame it, and how you're doing such amazing things right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think I'm going to start taking you around with me to provide introductions every time I walk into a room. I mean, that was brilliant.
There you go. What do you know? So talk to us, because, honestly, your journey from addict to entrepreneur, that's, what you talk about. And in the book, you get really real, you get really raw and granular about what your struggles were and what you went through and how you overcame those. So do you want to just talk, because a lot of the audience that might never have heard of you or your story, talk to us about that.
Yeah, sure. I grew up the son of an entrepreneur, so I kind of knew from the get-go that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know how, I didn't know what, but I knew that. And so I was always following my father around. He had me working in a store since I was 8 years old, breaking all the child labor laws. But he told me if I wanted dinner, that I better get into the store and work for him. So I learned at an early age how to sell. I also picked up a gambling habit when I was 10 years old, which I was introduced to by my uncle at Thanksgiving. I thank my uncle every day for that. That started like a 20-year addiction. So at 10 years old, I made my first bet. My uncle was watching like a football game at Thanksgiving, and the rest of the family was eating dinner. And I was wondering what is he doing? Why is he so interested in this game? And he took the sheet out and he explained to me that the sheet had like all the teams that were playing, football teams that were playing, and there was a spread, and there was a favorite, and there was an underdog. And he explained to me that if you picked four of the four games and you got them all correct, and you bet $10 that you would win $100. And that excited me. So I borrowed $10 from my parents. I told them I was going to get hoagies, which is what they called them back east, which is like these sandwiches that are like filled with salami and turkey and all this stuff. Anyway, they lent me the money for that. I went and I gambled it. And the first bet I ever made, I ended up winning with my brother. So we won $100. So that ignited this fire in me that wanted to duplicate that feeling. It was like an endorphin rush. I mean, I was 10 years old, so I didn't really know what it was, but it was this high that I wanted, and I wanted to continue to chase it. And so after I left, it turned out that after I left Thanksgiving, all the guys in my dad's warehouse gambled, and I started talking to them about my experience in Thanksgiving. And then I started taking whatever money my dad would give me for working, and I would gamble with the guys in the warehouse. And then they would start taking me to the racetrack for horses. So here I was like 10, 11, 12 betting on horses and betting on football games. And it turned out my Little League coach, my Little League baseball coach, was a bookie. So he started taking bets, because that's how we do things in New Jersey, which is where I'm from. And he started taking bets for me and all my friends. And then as the years went by, we started playing card games, 15, 16. I got a job. I was the first one I had a job. So I like a real job outside of working for my father. So I then got a banking account, and I would bring like my checkbook to these games. Now I'm 17 years old. My friends are 16 and 15, and I'm the one with a checkbook, like telling them I'll write a check if I can't, if I don't have the cash to pay these debts. So I was always pushing the limits, and I was addicted really early, even though before I knew what addiction was. I was addicted to that high, that rush I got from making that bet. It was a similar rush I got to making a sale in business. So these things were kind of indicative of each other, and I was always chasing both of them. And then when I went to college, then I, took it up another level, and I figured, why make bets when I could take bets? And that's when I became a bookie. And I started taking everybody else's bets, and driving spirit also got me into a little bit of drugs, and I started experimenting with every drug that was available to me: cocaine, steroids, mushrooms, Oxycontin. It wasn't really Oxycontin back then. It was Percocets, and all these different drugs that you come in contact with in college. And, besides heroin and meth, you name it, I did it. And then I became a drug dealer. So when I was in college, I was dealing drugs. I was a bookie. I was going to class, and I was also working, going door to door, selling home improvements. Because amongst all those addictions, I was addicted to money, and money fueled everything.
Just that right there is such a huge story on its own. And you can sort of pull that apart and look at, but what exactly was the addiction? Was it just the fun? Was it the chasing the high? Was it trying to fill a void? It was, like you say, at the end of the day, it was money. But what was it that you thought that money was going to bring to you? Did you even know? From the age of 10, it was probably just from a fun and just giving you something, boosting your ego and your confidence perhaps, or was there something else that you now look back and see that it was at the time you didn't realize?
Well, I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be, loaded with money. So that was definitely there, from the media, from, seeing my father run a successful business. from thinking I had to fulfill this role as his son. And so I think it was part of that. But when I started gambling, it was just fun. And I just liked the rush. And I liked the game of gambling. Like, having risking something and then like that thrill of winning or that agony of losing.
I was going to say, and then when you lose,
there was something within me that when I lost, just fueled me to do it again.
And I think, from an addiction standpoint, that's it, the highs and the lows. When you're so high and you're up there and everything is amazing and incredible, but then when you hit that low, it's so damaging on so many levels that you've got to start again and go even higher the next time, and the valleys and the peaks and the troughs.
Yeah, 100%. Before I went to Gamblers Anonymous, which years later I went to, and I credit with helping save my life, I didn't know that. But once I went to Gamblers Anonymous, I had a sponsor, and he used to tell me, as addicts, we live in the 1, 2s, and 3s, and the 8, 9s, and 10s. But the key to our sobriety and staying sober is living in the 4, 5s, and 6s. And that hit me hard. That hit me so much because I've always been chasing that high. Whatever it is, even when I stopped gambling and I stopped doing drugs, I was still chasing a high, whether it was closing a sale, whether it was running a marathon, whether it was climbing a mountain, whether it was writing a book. Whether it was going bungee jumping or skydiving, I was always chasing some sort of high. So really finding that those 4, 5s, and 6s in life really allow you to live a balanced and healthy lifestyle.
It's finding the balance, because when you have that personality, do you think it's more of a personality thing, or it is truly trying to live a life that, like you say, that society has deemed to be worthy of living?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think it's a personality thing, like how you grew up, how your parents were, what's been programmed into your mind, how much news have you watched, how much shows have you watched, what have you watched, what are you reading, what are you listening to from a podcast standpoint? Because we end up those things formulate our thought process.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is, and the people you surround yourself with. You are going to act similar to the 5 closest people in your life.
Yeah.
So if you're surrounding yourself with negative people, you're going to have a lot of negative thoughts. You're surrounding yourself with positive people, you're going to have a lot of positive thoughts. I mean, it's not rocket science, but we make it as humans so much more difficult than it is to do.
And that's so true. And like you say, like literally from the age of 10 moving forward, you were surrounded by those types of people. That's the environment that you were in, whether they were your age, younger or older. That's who you were surrounded with. And it just led you from one addiction to another to another. So what was the breaking point? Because obviously you ended up, you had this hugely successful business. You were making a ton of money. Were you really happy? And at what point was it that you decided that something had to change and you needed to break these habits that were clearly not serving you?
Yeah, so I had several of those moments. The first was with gambling. I stopped gambling before I even started my company. But, I was on the verge of committing suicide, and I thought many times of swallowing a bottle of a Percocet that I have and just going to sleep and never waking up, because the addiction was so fierce. I mean, I would gamble every single day. And even with the drug use that I partook in, there's very few things that I did every single day where I just completely consumed every thought in my mind. And that's how gambling was for me for like 20 years. So there was a point that was the point where it was actually my brother was going to Gamblers Anonymous, and we were driving back to Thanksgiving from New Jersey to Massachusetts, which is about a 4-hour drive. And he would not allow me to listen to sports radio. So I got in this argument with him, like, why can't I listen to sports radio? I need the information so I know what to bet on. And he told me he was going to Gamblers Anonymous and he wasn't listening to any sports anymore. And I ridiculed him because he's my younger brother and made fun of him a little bit. And then afterwards, I actually just thought to myself, I want to know what this Gamblers Anonymous has done to my brother. So when we got back after the trip, I went to a meeting just on curiosity, just following my curiosity and intuition. And I realized once I was in that meeting that I had more in common with everybody in that room than the majority of people in my life. And I knew that at that point, I knew I had an addiction because I was kind of in denial up to that point. And that's when I started just going regularly and I stopped gambling. And I didn't really start healing for a couple of years, but I was not gambling at that point. And that was a big step. So that was one big moment in my life where I realized and recognized I had an addiction and I started doing something about it. The drugs came a little bit later on.
Well, that's the thing, I think, and it's that realization, because I think a lot of the time when we are in these places of addiction, it is denial, because it's safer to stay where we are than to have to admit it and then have to try and deal with that, because that's a challenge in itself, because it's been the crux for so many years of your life that it's the easy way to be.
Completely. Denial is, an easy thing. It's also kind of the first sign of truth.
Yeah.
In a lot of areas.
So you did that. You went to Gamblers Anonymous, and then you tackled all the drugs, and that came next. And then you you ended up in this lawsuit with the business. How did you, when you were under that sort of pressure financially, dealing with that lawsuit, how did you not go back to the old ways, which could have been really easy for you? How did you stay sober, clean, and actually be able to move through the lawsuit?
Well, I wasn't sober and clean when I was going through the lawsuit. I mean, I wasn't gambling. I've been clean from gambling for 15 years now, but I was taking Adderall every day. I was smoking weed every night. I was doing GHB on the weekends, and I was drinking. I wasn't a big drinker, but I liked to party, so I drank on the weekends when I was at the bars. And I also invested in a bar. When I was in Utah, which is where I built my business. So I had all these things going on. I felt in a way I was gambling because I was moving money from one place to another. I had the lawsuit, a 6-year lawsuit with my ex-business partner over an agreement that I believe she violated after I purchased the company from her. And so everything fueled the lawsuit. Excuse me, like the Adderall, which for me was the most devastating of all the things that I took, because it fueled this fire inside of me where, first of all, you can get a lot of things accomplished. So you start to rely on it because you think you can be more productive in business. And, but it really controls your emotional level, your emotional state. So it would seem like I was angry all the time but I wasn't. It was just what the drug was doing to me. And it's an over-the-counter drug. So it's used to treat ADHD and ADD, which I have, attention deficit disorder. I get distracted very easily and sometimes it's hard to focus. So I just went to the doctor and told him, and then I got a prescription. And I started abusing the prescription. So I was taking it all the time. It was fueling everything, and it was fueling my emotional level. So the best way to describe it is if you're having kind of a crappy day, and you're on Adderall, it's the worst day in your existence. If you're having a good day, it's the best day you could ever have. And that's really what the drug would do to you. Right. So I would have these emotions of complete ecstasy and then complete misery. And again, it was those highs and lows, like I talked about before with the gambling addiction, that I would experience on a daily basis with this drug. And I just love the feeling it gave me inside. And also, if you wanted to clean your house, instead of it taking you 5 hours, it would take you an hour. You would do it so fast. And, that feeling, I just wanted it and wanted it and wanted it. So, but it drove me into isolation, and then I would be smoking weed every night, and I would not want to be around people, and I'd be kind of a little antisocial. And it just got to a point where I knew the destructiveness. I ended up in a hospital with an IV in my arm from taking too much GHB and passing out. I got arrested twice doing these different, whether it was GHB or whether it was Adderall. I got a DUI, and then I got arrested for possession of GHB because it's an illegal substance. And GHB, basically, you take a cap full of it, and you feel like you're completely wasted. You don't have to drink it. But if you take too much of it, you'll completely pass out.
Right.
And you won't be able to wake up, like, for a little while. Then it'll wear off an hour later.
Yeah.
But it's very highly addictive. So I had issues with all of those things. And, luckily I was able to stop cold turkey because they weren't serving me.
Yeah.
After going to many retreats, after talking about it a lot, after making a lot of mistakes, after all these things happening to me, and after being in this lawsuit. And I'm certainly much better off without any of those.
So you had that moment of clarity, and you talk about that in the book, right? You talk about this moment of clarity and talking about the habits that you create, the habits that you have in your life, and how you need to look at switching those around. Like the habits that you had then to get you through that lawsuit were leaning on these drugs to take you out of that space, or to be able to cope with it in a fashion that you thought was the right way of doing it. But then when you decided that that was not going to be the path forward for you. I mean, a lot of people might be listening to this, and especially when you think about the last 12 months with COVID and, emotionally and financially, people have been affected on so many levels. And a lot of people, I think, are turning to coping mechanisms that might not be necessarily healthy coping mechanisms. So what would you kind of say to people? I mean, in the book, as I say, you talk about habits, you talk about creative fulfillment, what you're surrounding yourself with, the people, what you're feeding yourself with your emotional diet. What would you say to people that are listening, like, well, how did you manage to do that? Because that was a huge cocktail of drugs that you were on. And to go cold turkey must have been in itself, for your nervous system, really difficult to cope with.
Well, I did start drinking a lot more coffee. Look, I'm not here to tell anybody what they should do. That's a personal choice.
Yeah.
However, tapping into my curiosity opened up many doors for me. And I think it's something that as we get older, become adults, try to be responsible, there's a few things that we lose, a lot of people lose and forget to incorporate into their life. And that's curiosity, and that's fun. Okay. Life doesn't have to be so serious. There's enough serious things in our lives that we must explore these different areas. So being curious for me was huge. So I went to like a sound bath, or what they call a sound healing. And these things changed my life. And basically you just lie down in a meditative state on the floor, and somebody is playing various sound bowls, these crystal bowls, which make this amazing noise that reverberates through your body and hits senses that it's never hit before. And they have most of the instructors and facilitators have a variety of instruments. And when I would just be able to control my mindset, or turn my mind off for an hour, lay down, and feel this sound like piercing through my body, it was an incredible feeling. And I actually felt high when I was done with it. So it was like able to replace some of these other highs by just experiencing that. And I've gone to 117 sound healings over the past 6 years of my life since I discovered it in Utah. And like, I don't even know if you've gone to one of them. If you haven't, you must go. They are everywhere. Yeah. So you can Google them, and you'll find them locally in every state in the country and in every country that I've ever been to. So I highly recommend checking one of those out. Running has always been a big outlet for me also. They talk about runner's high. When you're able to run and just check out, and let your mind and your thoughts like fall away, and your worries fall away, and kind of focus on positive things. That's a huge one. And, working out and yoga and things like this are important for certain people. That's their outlet. I used running. I use these sound healings.
Yeah.
So it's important that you build strong habits. Now I journal. And that's a big outlet for me, a creative outlet also. And I do, I meditate, but I'm not a consistent meditator. But I do meditate, and I read a lot more than I used to. Reading is very important. These are little things that we get away from. But if we can build this habit structure in our life, it can really keep us on track, and it can build confidence within ourselves, and it lifts our spirits. So these are things that you can do even in COVID times, especially in COVID times, and when you're locked in the house and when you're feeling isolated and you're not feeling great about yourself. These are things and different outlets you can use instead of the destructive outlets. And, I would say it's very important to revisit our habits every 6 months and see where we are, see what we've gotten away from, what's worked for us, and reincorporate those and commit to those in our lives.
I love that. And it kind of brings you back to the present and being in the now and looking at what you're doing that's serving you. What can you do today and now, and not worrying about, what you were doing before or need to do next. It's just being present. And I love the sound bath recommendation. I mean, it does it, dropping your nervous system out of that fight or flight, which you must have been on like this treadmill of fight or flight, into this rest and digest, to affect your body at a molecular level, a cellular level, where the vibration is just running through your whole body and allowing you to drop into that state. So talk about fate and what you've created since then, because you've done some amazing things since you dealt with all of that and you've moved through and worked on yourself, created this fate, this activated. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Since I settled the lawsuit after 6 years and $1 million in legal fees, over a $350K case. It was everything I had saved over those years. And for some people, it could be very upsetting. And I was very upset and actually very furious for the first 4 years of it. And then I started recognizing, and maybe 5 years, and I started recognizing that I did this to myself. It was all the decisions I made. So I needed to stop blaming everybody else and take responsibility, which I did.
Yeah.
And then after we settled the lawsuit, I realized that, and I sold the business. I sold the business to pay off the lawsuit and all my debts and start over. That's when I wrote the book. I wrote the book, Chasing the High, an Entrepreneur's Mindset Through Addiction, Lawsuits, and Journey to the Edge. And I left Utah, moved to California, and I started FATE, which is FATE, stands for From Addict to Entrepreneur. And it's basically an interview series where I interview former addicts who are now entrepreneurs and build multi-million-dollar companies and write articles for Thrive Global and Medium. And I kind of started this program where I take people through this 12-week program. In conjunction with that, I started, mentoring others and started this Activated movement, which is a nonprofit. It's called Activated.life. And we focus on mental health within the entrepreneur community, as well as giving back to the less fortunate and those in need. So I started that with a partner of mine, Parveen Panwar. He's the original founder. I'm the co-founder. And just came off of a retreat. Third year, we had a retreat in Costa Rica and in Dominical at a place called Imola Institute, where we take people through a 5-day transformational journey that includes sound healing and yoga and breath work and ice baths, but also music and movement and comedy and, all these things, and connection. All these things. So, I like to do transformation, a little bit different than everybody. It doesn't have to be so serious. There are serious moments, there are serious workshops, but I want to couple that with laughter and with movement and with fun and going to the beach and taking a hike out to a waterfall and doing a little stand-up and having musicians there who are really singing for us so you connect to your soul, because that's really what allows you to open up and feel alive. So that's what I've done with kind of faith and with the Activated movement and the book.
Amazing. And I guess that's just filling all of these voids that you would have before filled with these unhealthy habits. And this is, I can only imagine how much this fills you up, being able to do this and get back. And you do work now with the prison service too, right? You've been doing some work with the guys, the prison.
Yeah, before COVID hit, I was going to prisons. I visited, I guess, 4 different facilities where I either gave a talk about the book Chasing the High and told them about overcoming my addictions and getting arrested and all that stuff, or just participating in a program with an organization called Hustle 2.0, which goes into the prison systems for 4 days and maximum security prisons usually, and gives back and gets connected with the what we call them mavericks there. They're inmates, but we call them mavericks to give them some dignity back. These are people that have been forgotten in society. The key has been thrown away with them because they made a mistake in their life. And some of them made a horrible mistake, but they still are human beings. Yeah. And they still need to learn emotional intelligence, how to get along with others, how to better themselves, how to provide for their families, even though they're inside. Eventually, these people will get out. And also, you don't want these violent facilities going on. You want people to be able to treat each other like humans and, to have a future. And these programs that actually the Mavericks have written books now about all these different topics and how to cope with the struggles they've had in their lives, with the outside world, with being locked up, with other inmates, with, dealing with your ego, all these things that we deal with on the outside, they have to deal with on the inside also. They've never been taught, a lot of them, or given the tools to learn. So we're providing them the tools. This organization that I volunteer for, Hustle 2.0, is providing them the tools to grow as human beings and be productive citizens.
It's so amazing. And so inspiring. And to give back an act of service it's incredibly healing for you as well. But I think, like you say, they're still human beings. Everybody makes mistakes. We all make choices in life which aren't necessarily the best choices at some point. And it's just knowing to accept that, to own that, and to forgive yourself for that, but knowing that there is a better way forward, but only when you're educated in it. And sometimes people just aren't aware. So I think just being able to go in and help these people move forward so that when they are coming out to have a better life, and just for other people to see that is inspiring. So, we could talk all day. There is so much that you have done and achieved and continue to do in your life. I think the most important thing is I think everybody listening should buy this book, Chasing the High, because you are so candid in here. You talk so openly about it. You give practical tips and tools and just different ways of thinking and learning to be able to help other people that are dealing with stuff and moving through on their own journey. So I think for sure everybody needs that book. It's on Amazon, so they need to go to Amazon. We'll put all the links, we'll put everything into the show notes so people can find you, they can find your book, they can reach out to you if they feel called to check into Activated and any of the other amazing things that you are doing, because you're just a powerhouse. And I just love that you've turned it around in such an incredibly positive way. And I just feel very honored to know you and to call you a friend. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And yes, the book is on Amazon. It's also on Audible if you prefer to listen, and you can handle a New Jersey accent for 4 hours. I read it. So feel free to jump on there as well. And I look forward to seeing what is ahead for you as well. You're doing amazing things with Harmonia.
Thanks, Michael. So great to have you. Have a beautiful afternoon. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I truly hope that you enjoyed the show, and there is at least one thing that you can take away from today's episode that will help you build that sustainable healing toolkit. It would mean the absolute world to me if you would subscribe to the show, give it a 5-star review, and share this or any of the other episodes with somebody that you feel could really benefit by listening. I look forward to seeing you next time.